Well, hello there, you beautiful internet and you fantastic creatures of the beyond. Nice to see you all again. I know I've been busy, but I have also prepared something nice for you guys today. So, check this out. This is a SMIL animation, or a SMIL animation. Well, SMIL animations are quite something, and I've run into a lot of problems with them. Mainly, I don't know, but browsers don't seem to like them so much. And you have to jump through a lot of hoops to make them work. I'm not entirely sure if how I did it was right or wrong, but it works, although I did find quite a few restrictions along the way. So let's have a look at the code. The first thing you will notice is that you have to put the code of the SVG directly into the HTML. I'm not entirely sure why this is so. I can't make it any other way to work, so yeah, we'll have to roll with this. Basically, I've copied, let me see. Let's open this. I mean, this one doesn't have anything crazy. I just made this Perl thing. Yeah, 1.4 is a bit, I don't know, buggy. So all we have here is our Perl. Hey, it's a nice design. I made it after some references. It's nothing too crazy. And then this path over here, and we'll see the meaning of this path in a bit. But for now, I've also given them some IDs, like for example for, let's go filter. Okay, so this group that contains the Perl has the ID Perl. Perfect. So what happens in here? All of this crazy thing, well, I have some things hidden, of course. Does the following animation. Right now, it's doing this particular animation. This is a SMIL animation. Now, let's talk about the advantages and disadvantages of SMIL. So basically, the disadvantages is that you can only animate within the viewport itself. So if you have something like translation, rotation, scale, and blah, 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 you need to make sure that the viewport is as wide as the action that you're taking on the screen. Otherwise, it's just gonna hide outside of the borders, and yeah, the magic is gonna be gone. Then, as I said, you have to drop the SVG code directly into the HTML. I tried with objects, with images, even with PHP, with includes, and it's just not working. I have no clue. And then it is quite difficult to handle the code if you're trying to do a lot of animations, and I've done quite a few here and some more, but yeah, you're gonna lose track because these are difficult to understand unless you really format the code neat. You will get lost into these things. Now, the advantage is that you can chain animations together and even create delays between them, which is a bit more trickier to do with CSS and JavaScript. And then you can animate following a path. We'll check that out. And it is much easier to learn than CSS and JavaScript. Basically, there are, let's call 4 types of animations. So the basic one is called animation. And here, the animation is more prone to be used with primitives such as rectangles, ellipses, and so on. basically you have an attribute type. In this case we call it the CSS, but it can also be an XML if we want to. But in this case for the CSS we look for the opacity and we tell it we want to give it from 1 to 7 to 0.7. Now I've done a few extra things here, and first of all let's check it like so, and then we'll talk about keyframes and things like that. So right now this is a duration of 3 seconds and it's repeating indefinitely. If I refresh this, it's gonna do this. Good. Now right now it's gonna clip like this because it's going into only one direction. So in CSS we do keyframes. Now the keyframes we can specify at which intervals we want something to happen. So SMIL has something similar, but basically we have to kind of manually write them like so. So first of all, we have to give the values, in this case, of the opacity. So I'm going from 0.4 to 1, then to 0.4 again. And I'm saying I'm starting at the keyframe 0, which is gonna be 0.4. Then I'm going to keyframe 0.3. I could put whatever, 0.5 if I want to make it faster and so on, but this gives this impression of smooth in, smooth out, or ease in, ease out kind of effect. There is also a specific type of ease in and ease out, but those are... I could not find a way to make them work. We'll check those a bit later. But basically I say at frame 0 I go 0.4, at frame 0.3 I go 1, and at frame 1 I go 0.4. This is basically from 0 to 100% if you want to call it like that. So I'm creating this intermediate sort of flashing. So if I refresh now, you see it's going back and forth, back and forth. Now, the next type of animation is called an animation transform. Basically, with animate, we can't do the translation, rotation, and things like that. We have to call this animate transform. So this one looks for the XML, in this case the attribute type, then we look for the attribute name as a transform, and then we call this type a translate. Now, very important here, I don't think there is a type for a matrix, because if you guys know, I'm not sure, I think I've changed this here, but let me check. Yeah, you see here I have a matrix. And the matrix usually is like so. This one is for the scale, the first two. Then the next two are going to be for the skew, like how it's going to, I don't know, skew the object on the horizontal and vertical. And then the last two, they should be related to the translation. So 6 values here. Okay. Of course, matrices can be a bit more complex than that, but you get what I mean. Now, this is actually neglecting the matrix. So I had to chain 2 animations here for transformation. One is for translate and the other one is for scale. So let's see what happens. Now, why aren't these working? Well, mainly because I did say I want to begin on a click, a mouse click basically. So let's see. I've also set the values here for the translation we have to give an x and an y. So we start at 0, 0, then we go at 40, 40, then at 0, 0, again, you know, from frame 0, then to frame 0.5 or 50%, and then to 100% or 1. Now this key spline was supposed to be the ease in and ease out, but they literally don't work. I didn't see any difference in the way I've done it. And these are kind of, if you want to call them a path. Yeah, the documentation is kind of sketchy on how it works, but anyway, this is supposed to go like concave, and this one has to be convex. And there is also a way to create an S path, but yeah, it's crazy. Basically, this doesn't work. I just let it here just so I have it as a reference. Okay, this duration is gonna be 1 second. If we click on this, it's going to go indefinitely. And I also gave it an ID of trigger. And this one will check why we have this ID in this animate transform. Now, the next animate transform is going to be related to scale. So I'm actually telling it to be 0.4 and from 0.4 to 0.4. So it's not changing. But why am I doing this? If I'm gonna disable this, it's going to reset the scale. So it's only going to do the translation. But very importantly here, we also have to call it on a click, although we can call it some other way. And we have to give this additive sum. Otherwise, it's only going to select the first one. Now, let's see. If I'm gonna click, okay, there we go. It's going back and forth because we have this here. At frame 0 it's 0, 0, at frame 50% it's 40, 40, and then we're going back to 0, 0 at 100%. Perfect. And if I would, let's say, remove the scale here, look what happens. See? It resets the scale. So yeah, this has to be here. Now, why did I give this ID over here of trigger? Well, basically, actually I haven't tried on this one. But let's see. It should technically go like this. If I'm gonna call it on trigger, that begin, this one should trigger at the same time. So let's see. No, doesn't want to work. Did I type it right? Yeah, well, it seems it does not want to work like this. Well, what can you do? But I have actually chained the trigger over here. So when the trigger begins, this animation is going to be triggered as well. So this is going to be a CSS, is going to affect the fill. I told it to go from white to this corn silk and then back to white. So I'm going from 0 to 0.3 or 30% and then to 100%. The duration is going to be 1 second and it's going to repeat indefinitely. So let's see. If I'm going to activate it correctly, this is related to this glow over here on top. So if I'm gonna refresh, click, you see, it's changing. And it's a bit out of sync because I've set it to 1 second and the other ones are at 3 seconds. But check this out. What if I want to trigger this after 3 seconds? Now this is something that I don't think CSS can do on its own, or I'm not sure, but I think you need to use some JavaScript in order to do the same trick here. So check this. I click this. This doesn't change color, but after 3 seconds, bam, it starts doing this. See? Really awesome. We can also put this at the end, but this means that the animation has to end, and this is continuous, whatever. And then we have a spin animation over here. Now, this one was quite tricky to do, and I had to manually write it. I had to look up some examples. Basically, it's this one. I'm gonna show it up. It's doing this thing. Now, this animation is applying to this spin, but this spin is inside this group, and it's doing this matrix. So if I remove this matrix, look what happens. It's going back to 0, 0. So this matrix is actually very important because it, first of all, it combines the the scale with the skew and then with the translation. And all these 3 elements can set up our thing here. Now, this is so difficult to control. And you have to simplify it as much as possible, because if you give too many vectors, it's a nightmare. I followed an example for this and it worked, but I wouldn't know how to make this in Inkscape and then translate it here. So yeah, this is kind of a drawback. Now, I've also made a nice rectangle here and the path. So if you remember, I've set that path, that triangular path. Let's see, this one I have to stroke wide, let's say 0.3. It's going to display over here. Now again, I had another issue with the rectangle here. Let's give it opacity 1. And it's over here. Now, why is it over here? Well, there is a problem with it. If I'm gonna click it... oh, actually, not yet. So, there is another type of animation. So, I'm gonna jump this one for now. And we're gonna look at this one, set. Now, this one, basically, we are applying it to this rectangle, the snap. And we're calling the attribute name fill. And we're saying we want to apply it the color blue when we click it for 3 seconds. So after 3 seconds, the color blue disappears. Look, 1, 2, 3, bam. There we go. So that's one thing. Now the next thing is this animate motion. So this is the 4th type of animation. So again, animation, I mean animate, animate transform, set, and animate motion. Now, animate motion is basically doing something clever. It looks at our snap. Yeah. And the duration is gonna be 1 second. It's gonna trigger on the click. Fill freeze, this basically means go all the way. So let's see, I'm applying this M path. Or basically I could have put path in here and copied the whole path from this D and put it like so. But instead of bloating the code like so, I'm calling this M path, which is a reference to this one. Perfect. So yeah, the path is this one. I can also hide it if I want, but I'm not 100% sure how to make them overlap. So look what happens. If I'm gonna click it, oh, I haven't applied it. Yeah, there we go. It's going to create this shape, this triangular shape. So it's following the path, yeah, the snap path, like so. But it's not on top of it. And I am unsure why. It might be the coordinates of the path that have to coincide with something. Anyway, this one is trying to create this path, but it's jumping. Maybe it's trying to take a reference from something. Maybe my viewport has some issues. I've also copied all of these things from Inkscape with the Sodipodi, and yeah, so this might be also a problem. I'm not 100% sure. Maybe something in the depths. This one has a lot of blurs on it, so it has these filters. It could be a lot of things. So you might manage to do some very basic animations without any filters or any of these extra things, and just simply write the SVG from scratch, and it will work. But yeah, there are quite a few drawbacks, and these are mainly the drawbacks because of the browser, not because of the SVG itself. But there are some very interesting ways you can use it. Mainly, I think, for logos. You can animate logos and just paste them directly, and then if you want to influence them with CSS afterwards, it's gonna be a bit easier. But the animation is, I mean, if you're gonna do a simple animation, it's less to write here and easier to understand than just writing CSS in combination with JavaScript for some of the things. So I think for replacing colors or even doing a simple motion or chaining some animations between different elements in the viewport, it's quite nice. But yeah, the more animation you're trying to add, the more code you'll have to write, and then it's gonna be like this. And then it's gonna be extremely difficult to follow. Now, there are some tools out there that I have researched. And the first one that I want to talk about is called Inka. So basically this one is quite an interesting software, but unfortunately in Inkscape 1.4b, the beta is not working correctly. It's kind of crashing sometimes, but basically what you see here, like this space over here, is exactly the software. The software is going to snap down here, and then you're going to see your Inkscape set underneath it. And basically this connects into Inkscape software, and it's drawing the viewport, and then you can use the keyframes here and animate by... It's quite a simplistic software, but basically you can move in Inkscape and set a keyframe here, and the animation is going to happen within this place, and then you have to export it. Export the code. They even say like this project is under active development and it contains multiple bugs and we're currently fixing. So yeah, you have to look at some of the tutorials, but the interface has changed quite a bit from the tutorials. Although it is intuitive, you don't have a lot of buttons. Still, in terms of animations, I think they could do with some improvements because they're quite choppy. But yeah, they do work. Although I think it's a bit difficult to maneuver them. But still, it is quite an improvement. I like this one. Where Inca is eating the Bill Gates. Okie dokie. Now, let's look at some other ones. SVG Circus. Now, this one comes with some predefined animations. And you can do them live, basically. That's quite interesting. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure how you could implement your own code. You can use this to makeshift something and do something like this. It's quite interactive. I really like it. But yeah, it's kind of predefined. I don't know if you can do many things with this. But they have quite some interesting things, at least for learning how the code works. You can look on some of these things with scale, for example, with skew, with run. It's quite interesting, and I don't remember exactly how you could export SVG, and it's going to include the animation inside the code. Next one is this one, Shapeshifter. Now this one is kind of like Inca, but you import your SVG inside directly, so you have to upload it on this website. And when you export it, well, unfortunately, it doesn't export with the animate, it exports with SVG frames and SVG with CSS. I don't know, I couldn't get the animate to export from here. I'm not sure exactly if it's even possible. The next one is this one, although keep in mind that you have to pay for this one. Well, they do have a free tier, but then if you want to do some other things, although they include some hosting privileges and things like that. But it is interesting. So if you open this framer, you can do some of the things here, but I didn't bother too much because there's quite a lot of things going on. And I'm not sure where the animation is. Maybe with actions, I don't know. I would be lying if I would say I know how to work with this one. Basically, it allows you to do some positioning, but I know they have animations as well. Like, look. See? Although this color is killing me. So it is possible, but I just didn't go too deep into it. Although from what I've read, you should be able to export without any watermarks or things like that. Now the next one, I'm not sure if it's gonna work. It's loading kind of slow. And this one is a JavaScript actually. And it's a library. You have various ways of doing it, and you can use this library to apply to your elements within the SVG, or to just have SVGs on your HTML and manipulate them with this library. This library looks quite decent, I would say. It has some predefined animations, but again, it's JavaScript, so you would have to look for the documentation, to be honest. And it does have some CSS involved as well. But it also has a timeline, but you have to write JavaScript in this case. I don't know what twin and gasp really are. Anyway, next thing, and I'm gonna put these links in the description as well if you guys want to check them out. Snap SVG. This one, yeah, it does have some things in here. It's kind of a library. I didn't go too far into it as well. But yeah, if you want to write things by hand, you can find some interesting things in here. There was something with animation. With element animate, for example. But again, it's kind of complicated, so I didn't bother too much. The next one, another JavaScript library. This one looks a bit easier than the previous one, but you can do some cute things, and they also give you examples, although again, you have to write things by hand with the JavaScript. They're quite cool. And there is one more, which this one I couldn't make it work. It's just loading really slow. It does load eventually, but I think it's their website that has a problem. Yeah, although, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how much of an advanced animation you can do with this one. And you also have a pro version, but you can animate directly. You also have some tutorials, although you have to be patient with the interface to load. Well, until that happens, well, if it happens ever, I don't know. We'll check on that later. Now, animate SVG icons that help you stand out. These ones, I think they're predefined and you play into this thing, but it's free. Although don't expect anything too crazy. But yeah, it's quite cool. And you can also do some designs. And you have it for Mac OS and Windows. And yeah, it's quite cool. I like it. So you do some interesting animations, but mostly this is oriented towards icons, which I would say is really nice to have. But as you can see, they're quite simplistic. They trying to do something more advanced like this and animate it, I think it would be quite a difficult chore. So you have to work with flat designs. And I think it's only this guy that worked on this one. They're really cool. I love it. And it's free. And obviously we have to talk about the alligator in the room, which is SVGator. SVGator or whatever. SVGator. This one is quite advanced and it can do a lot of good animations, but you have to buy it. You can get the free version, but they will put watermarks and only allow you to export as MP4 and GIF only. While here you can export some other extensions, but I'm not sure if they allow you to export SVG. And I don't know if $20 a month is really worth it. I mean, yeah, sure. They do have some very interesting things in here, and they look very beautiful. So I think if you're a studio or you're pressed by time to do something animated, yeah, you can get it. And yeah, they have quite a few things here. The interface is a bit chunky. There is a steep learning curve. Although the animation is quite smooth. So I do like that. But again, I'm not sure you can export as animate. Now you see this thing is really cool. With ease in, ease out, stop, and this is what I was trying to do, but I couldn't make it work. Yeah, and I have quite a lot of interesting designs here. And I think that's about all of them that I could discover. Yeah, definitely SVG Gator is the winner of them all if you want to do full stack of designs. But I believe that you should try to learn to do animations by yourself because it's not a lot of code. It's like, look, this chunky little thing does a really nice thing like this. Like all this path following animation is the same as what I did over here with this one. It's just a few lines of code. Of course, in my case, I couldn't make it a line, but then again, maybe it's the browser. And maybe there is something that I've missed, but it's possible, it's doable. And the intermediate part with the keyframes, it's again quite easy to do. You can do as many as you want here. Like for example, let's go back to our example. So let's say we want, let's go for the translation. Let's say we want 50 here. And we're gonna put this at 0.7. So at 70%, it's gonna go at 50-50. So let's see what happens. Click. You see? And I also made an ease in animation. Because it's going easier when it comes towards this, and then it just snaps back. Which is really cool because, yeah, this is a very short time frame from 0.7 to 1. To go from 50 to 0. So since it's a small time frame and a big distance, it's gonna just pop back there. So yeah, you can do quite a lot of interesting things. And of course I can put -50 here. Let's see what happens. See? So we can play with the location. But as I said, you have to take into account the viewport and you have to make it as wide and height as the animation is going, or just be careful with your coordinates. And of course, if you want to make your life a lot easier, you can move the viewport coordinates 0, 0 in the center like we did last time, and then kind of dance around that. But there are other tricks and things like that, because positions can be also relative, not only absolute. So relative means that if I would put a group around this square, I can make exactly how we did with this spinning thing right over here. Sorry. This spinning thing is its position is relative to the group positioning. So the group is having an absolute positioning, but the path is relative to the group. So if I remove this matrix, I did show you guys, it was rotating here in the corner because it's going to the origin back. Now this one is 180 by 180 on the X and Y, so it's going over here. I think this one is 200 by 200 if I remember correctly, the viewport. Actually, we can check. No, it's 352. So yeah, hope this is an interesting thing that you can apply to your own things. A thing to your own things. Yeah, for logos or icons, it could be really cool to have. And I plan on making some cool animations in the future. But yeah, the only drawback to this, you have to have it in the HTML, which is kind of a pain. You can optimize the SVG when you save as and go as SVG optimized, and you get rid of a lot of code that it's not related to your design. But when you're applying filters and gradients and things like that, it's better to be careful what you remove. It might break some of the things. Okay, enough for now. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll catch you in the next experiment. Stay awesome. Bye 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 bye.